Mike Israetel is one of the most well-known names in the fitness industry. His training philosophies have influenced thousands of lifters around the world. But that doesn't mean Mike always gets it right. Today, we're breaking down Mike's famous methods, and I'll explain exactly what to do instead. This isn't about drama, it's simply about clarity. So hit the subscribe button right now and let's jump straight into this. So in the video we're about to see, Dr. Mike Israetel has combined 3 movements into one, in which he's speaking about how effective and efficient a fly curl press is when it comes to building both size and strength. We're going to talk about that.
You're just combining random exercises. Well, that might be true to some people who don't know things. It just works. So check this out. We start up here and we are going to do a classic cable fly all the way down for a big stretch. Notice, I'm not cocking my biceps like this. I'm letting them go full stretch as well as my chest. The next movement is for me to bicep curl, strict bicep curl all the way to this position here, which sets us up for a press, returning us back to the fly.
I saw somebody make a comment about this on the line a few weeks ago saying that Mike Israetel of 5 years ago would rip apart the Mike Israetel of today. And I kind of see that. Ultimately, not only have I said many times how if you combine exercises, all you really do in most cases when looking at the context of hypertrophy is reduce the effectiveness of said exercises, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a genius to just process a couple of things here. Think about how much weight you bicep curl. Think about how much weight you chest fly, and think about how much weight you chest press. To combine those 3 movements would indicate or imply that you should be able to lift similar amounts of weight across all 3, but that's not the case. I can bicep curl a significant amount less than I can both chest fly and chest press, which means what I'm trying to do here, one of those movement patterns is going to fail first, which means that for a muscle group, maybe the biceps in this case, it might have some effectiveness due to my ability to take that movement to, if not close to failure. But that simply leaves my chest with many reps in the tank, thus essentially eliminating any stimulus for growth, thus rendering that movement pretty ineffective for my chest. So sure, my biceps may get some stimulus due to potentially failing first, but my chest is barely warmed up at this point. If I think about how much I bench press, how much I chest press, whatever it is, compared to how much I bicep curl, there is a huge discrepancy there, and no amount of combining movements is going to change that. And this is partly why combining movements is such a poor choice, because sure, it's effective because you're putting things together, but is it really effective outside of time saving? When one might actually argue you're not really getting anything from it, you're simply just moving for the sake of moving and completely eliminating any effectiveness that might be yielded when considering hypertrophy stimulus. Don't combine your movements, separate them. Do one movement properly versus doing multiple movements like crap. So in this next video, Mike is speaking about how one of the secret hacks to muscle growth is actually taking a month off the gym. And that goes against everything I preach, considering I'm not a huge believer in deloads, let alone time off unless really needed. And we're going to elaborate on that in a moment.
Take a month off to see massive gains. Growth hack.
The growth hack is to take a month off of training once a year, every year, to grow more. That's a fresh, very resensitized muscle, sensitive to muscle growth, sensitive to training, because it hasn't experienced it in a while.
The wise words of Taylor behind the camera. That is so dumb. I think he summed up very well. That's the video over. Fantastic. Ultimately, think about it like this. Of the year in which you're training, 1/12 of that year is spent not only not progressing, not even maintaining, but actually regressing. So for a 1/12 of that year, which is a pretty hefty percentage, you are doing nothing. You are not training, you're not progressing. In that period, you're actually going to end up regressing, because we know that muscle is actually lost pretty quickly. And if you take a month off training, you are going to lose a notable amount of muscle during that period. So rationalize it like this, and again, I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist for this. If you want to optimize building muscle and remain in the state that is most conducive to hypertrophy, i.e. building that muscle, surely you want to be training effectively, consistently, and regularly. And this is kind of why I don't massively believe in deloads unless it's really needed. A deload should only really be incorporated, for example, if you can't recover from what you're doing, or there are external stresses that could influence that, whatever it may be. So how do you fix that? Rather than deloading, in which you might spend a period of the year not progressing and almost arguably taking some time off, or active recovery we'll say, you would then figure out how you can best recover from what you're doing, alter your programming accordingly so you don't need to deload. Fantastic. You can train consistently throughout the year and remain chasing that stimulus for growth all the time. Love it. If you take a month off, for example, why? You are ultimately going to lose muscle during that period. You're going to take steps back, and sure, you may rebuild that muscle that has been lost very quickly. I understand that. Surely it's probably better just to not lose that muscle in the first case. If you're having to take a month off because you can't recover, your training program needs to change, and you should change it in a manner that does allow recovery, i.e. maybe reducing your volume, maybe considering some intensity changes, i.e. not training to failure every set, whatever it may be. But to take a whole month of training to regress to then accelerate progression back to where you once were and maybe continue progression as normal from there just seems very counterproductive when considering hypertrophy. And quite frankly, I think if you do this and implement this and you're very serious about building as much muscle as possible, you probably need to consider more education and maybe even a coach, which funnily enough brings us to, link down below in the description, also the comment section too, there's a link to TFNL coaching. Fill in the application form, which takes about 2 minutes. I'll send you an email where we can talk about a few bits and bobs. I'll explain the process in greater detail. Pop on a free Zoom consultation call where we can go through everything, chat some waffle and think about life, and you can ponder if it's worth it or not for you. No pressure. As always, link down below in the description, also the comment section too. And also while you're here, and you probably hate me, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video because it means a lot, otherwise I'll cry. Thanks, bye. Last video on the list, it's a big one, something that if you follow Mike Israetel, you'll know he's a big fan of, which is overemphasizing the stretch or the length and range throughout any movement, because in his belief, seemingly, it seems to be the most stimulating portion of any movement for growth.
Very deepest stretch. You can even touch the biceps or the dumbbells to the ground, and you're just going to curl up normally, and you'll notice, perfect, and then down slow, under control. You have to do the descent slow and under control because you'll notice your shoulder is in a bit of an interesting position. This is a position that will make your shoulder stronger, but initially, it's going to feel a little bit weird.
Mike seems to promote this in a lot of his videos and a lot of his movements, which is overemphasizing the stretch portion of every movement he does. Again, it's actually going to be every, no, that's probably an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. He's a big ambassador, we'll say, for stretch and length and position dominant movements. And for a long time, there was this idea that every muscle in the world responded effectively or efficiently to stretch-mediated hypertrophy, in which length and range movements would potentially be more conducive to growth and provide a better stimulus for hypertrophy. But we know that's not the case. Not every muscle does respond well to stretch-mediated hypertrophy. When you put the muscle in the length and position or only really target a length and range, or in this case an exaggerated length and range, what you do risk doing here is potentially creating more muscle damage, which is not something we want to consider or favor when looking at muscle growth, because there's no relevance or link between more muscle damage equaling more muscle growth, which was a common misconception many of us believe for many, many years. With that additional muscle damage, you actually hinder recovery. If you hinder recovery, you hinder your ability to train that muscle more effectively, more times per year, when we know frequency is arguably one of the most important factors to consider when looking at optimizing hypertrophy, paired with obviously progressive overload and intensity. So if you hammer loads of length and range movements where you're in an exaggerated stretch position for a really long time, hindering recovery because you've yielded a lot of muscle damage, thus hindering your ability to train a muscle 3 times a week and maybe only be able to train it 1 time a week, are you not then just limiting how many opportunities you're giving that muscle to grow because you think that stretch range is going to give you such a magic stimulus when it's really not? So although I do think length and range movements are absolutely fantastic, I'm a big believer in incorporating a mix of both short and position dominant movements and length and position dominant movements. I do believe if you are going to, for whatever reason, increase the range of motion of a movement, I think you should do it progressively over time and ease into that new range of motion rather than jumping straight into it, although in a lot of cases it's just not necessary to begin with. And this kind of brings me to a point I want to address about Mike's training philosophies and his development over the years. And a lot of people are going to comment and probably disagree with everything I'm saying. Absolutely fine. To be frank with you, this is just my opinion, and to be honest, it's really not that deep. It's not worth getting very angry with me in the comment section over, but you certainly can if you want to shout out the YouTube algorithm. Mike is a prime example, in my opinion, of somebody who has gone all in on something, like the big stretch will say, and just stuck with that and built a brand somewhat around that. From my understanding of what I used to watch of Mike many years ago, he used to be a lot more aligned with what the modern research would say, and his views were a lot more, I'd say, acceptable and understandable. Over time, his popularity has increased, and as the popularity has increased, I've noticed his content has shifted. He's funnier than he used to be. He's a very funny individual, I'll give him that, but also he promotes a lot of what I believe to be misinformation or arguably nonsense online because he knows it does well. In my opinion, he's an example of somebody who has sold his soul to the, we'll say, metaphorical YouTube devil or social media devil, we'll say, to increase his popularity and to get more clicks, more views for marketing reasons, which in turn has helped him get more money, when in reality he's actually reduced the quality and effectiveness of what he's actually promoting when looking at optimizing his given discipline, which in this case we speak about hypertrophy. However, Mike does upsell a lot of coaching through his app, and committing to this one idea and one principle of how he likes to train or encourage people to train does lead to a lot of influence and a lot of attention or interest in people going towards his coaching methodologies and his app, which in turn means he's probably going to make quite a lot of money. So from a marketing perspective, he's done a fantastic job. He's making probably more money than ever, getting good views, he's getting great engagement, which is fantastic for him. But from an effectiveness and accuracy of information perspective, in my personal opinion, I do believe he has reduced the quality of his information to capitalize on the fact he can make a lot more money from being a bit of a sausage online. But again, like with all my videos, that is just my opinion. Do I disagree with everything Mike says? Absolutely not. Some of the things I do agree with. Sometimes he says something, I turn around and say, you know what, not only was that a good take, but I actually agree with the information he's provided there. Sadly, that is now few and far between and seems to be decreasing as time goes on. But again, like I said, this is just my opinion, and I'd love to hear your opinion in the comment section below. So please do let me know. What are your thoughts and opinions on the big stretch, the fly curl cable press thingamajig, and taking a month off training? Until the next one, thank you for tolerating me, thank you for tolerating my waffle about Mike, and thank you for tolerating the video. Like, comment, cuddle me, subscribe.